Warning: the Mended Futures podcast contains stories told by guests that may be sensitive to some people. Viewer and listener discretion is advised. The opinions expressed by guests do not reflect the views of the hosts and/or producers of this podcast.
You are in for a treat with this episode. We hear from Lindsey Runda, who has been in multiple places along the Vision 30 River, and we hear how she is working to find balance in her roles personally and professionally. And it was a real treat to be across the room.
She currently serves as a children's pastor for Crosspoint, and she may be a children's pastor, but she ministered to us as well. So we hope you enjoy. So this week we have Lindsey Runda. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes.
Wonderful. You are the current children's pastor for Crosspoint.
Yep.
Is that correct? My mom has been a children's pastor for like the last 30 or so years. So.
Wow. Can I have her phone number, please?
Yes. I think you two would get along very well. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So before you were the children's pastor for Crosspoint, you were a caseworker for the Liberty Godparent Home.
I was. It's actually, there's like sister entities there.
Oh, really?
There's the Liberty Godparent Home, and then there's Family Life Services Adoption Agency.
Okay.
And so they work together in tandem many times, but they are two separate nonprofits as well.
Gotcha.
So I worked as a caseworker, adoption caseworker at Family Life Services, and it was amazing. I love them.
What was your introduction to that adoption space?
Oh, man. I mean, to Family Life Services, it was kind of embarrassing, really, because I moved.
Oh, do tell.
I know, yeah. I moved to Lynchburg because my husband had graduated from Liberty. I was living in the Midwest at the time, and when we got married, I moved here. And my degree's in social work. I have an MSW, Master's in Social Work, and I always wanted to work in the adoption field. I just hadn't had the experience yet or the opportunity to do it. I had a lot of other experiences that really had nothing to do with adoption. I worked at a men's homeless shelter for a long time. Didn't think I would go there because I've always loved families and children. So when I moved here, I really just wanted to be able to have the opportunity to settle into Lynchburg and understand the dynamics and the culture and the community. So I worked at Liberty for a little while just as an admin at the law school and was just searching for an opportunity for adoption specifically. I don't know if you guys know JJ Cole, but she is a professor now at Liberty. And someone at my church said, "Oh, you are a social worker and you're new to town. You should meet JJ." So I was like, okay, great. I would love to meet her. The only thing I knew about her was that she was a social worker. So we met at her office and she asked me what my passions were. And I went on and on about adoption. On and on. And this is why it's embarrassing, because I did not know she was the director at Family Life Services Adoption Agency at the time.
No way.
So to me, it almost felt like once she revealed like where she worked, who wouldn't have known that? Like who wouldn't have known what her actual job was except for me?
Oh,
So
but
I
it was
like,
so authentic.
yeah,
you just
but
were
I was
so
like,
passionate
oh,
about
I
it.
just love foster care and adoption, and someday I really hope to make connections to get into a job like that. And she's like, well, I just happened to be the director of an adoption agency. And my face turned like tomato red. I was like, I promise you, JJ, I did not know that. This was not like a passive aggressive plug to get into your world. But that's cool. Tell me more. So about a year later, she contacted me and said, hey, we have a caseworker position opening. Would you be interested in interviewing? And I was like, oh my goodness, yes. So that's how I heard about it and got in, I suppose.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
What did you love most about that work?
You know, I think just from my own story, you know, we all go through things in life. And I just really have a passion for children belonging in families. And for people in general to belong somewhere. And I loved when I got to see children who belonged to these beautiful birth parents who made such a brave choice, honestly, to say, you know what? I'm going to hand you off to someone who I know is going to love you just as much as me, but who can provide for you the opportunities I know that I can't. Like, I can't even imagine being able to make that kind of decision. And so watching families, adoptive families, bring children into their homes, but also watching birth parents like lay down that right was the most selfless act. I'm a crier, so like,
Yeah,
I'm glad
We
you
have
had
the
tissues.
tissues, and I'll join you. So
It really was the most selfless act that I could watch anyone do. And this was before I became a mom. My last year as a caseworker, I was pregnant, had my child, my first child. And so there was this whole new element after I became a mother, watching these brave birth parents, birth moms make these decisions was incredible. And then watching adoptive parents just welcome this child into their home, like, this is my child. And it was just very emotional, but also very cool to see how they would also come together. A lot of times there would be an open adoption or what we call a mediated adoption, where there's still contact with birth parents and a family through the caseworker. And it was just really cool to see how their family turned into something new. And I loved it so much. I loved educating people too. Education is kind of like, I think, powerful.
Yeah.
And so it's one of the things I loved about my job. A birth mom or a potential birth mom would come to me and just ask questions like, what is this adoption thing like? Like, what, and I would just be able to walk her and sometimes birth dad through that process to help them come up with the best decision. And sometimes they decided, oh my goodness, I can parent. Like, I actually do have the resources. I didn't realize I could do that. And that was a win. That was like, yeah, you actually do have the resources. I'm so glad that you know that now and that you're empowered to do it. And then other times where it was like, okay, this is the right decision to place my child for adoption. So it was just really cool to educate them and then watch their wheels turn and figure things out for themselves. So
I'm kind of curious about the differences or similarities between being a caseworker for an adoption agency versus foster care. Is that sort of a different kind of dynamic? Because I feel like we haven't had anyone from an adoptive agency specifically. So are there families waiting for children to be placed for adoption? Like, how does that kind of work?
That's a good question. It is there are obvious similarities to foster care and adoption, but there are very drastic differences too. When a birth mom comes to us and makes a plan for adoption, she knows like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I think some of the similarities are there is a waiting list a lot of times. Family Life Services specifically they placed infants. And so there's just more of a waiting list for domestic adoption in that regard. And that can be tough to be on a waiting list as adoptive parents. I don't know if you're familiar with the process, but many adoption agencies, they have books now where really I think the stance with this process I'm going to explain is that they want to be able to empower birth parents to make a choice. Not just, okay, I'm placing my child for adoption, but to really choose, who do I want to adopt my child? And
It's
I
an
think
informed
that's what
decision.
that's what it's morphed into over the years. Really giving that birth parent the power until they relinquish their parenting rights. Power in the sense of just making those decisions for their child. And it could be simple things. So, for example, an adoptive couple or a pre-adoptive family would make a booklet. It's basically just like a photo album, really,
that's cool.
of their life. And
or a sales brochure.
Yeah, really, is what
A
you
resume.
kind of want.
Right.
You're like, we encouraged when I worked there, you have to be as authentic as possible. You can't, it's kind of like social media. You can put your best foot forward, and you probably in some ways should share the strengths of your family. But you also want to be real, because authenticity is something that a birth parent can spot from a mile away. And it's really something they're looking for, or at least the ones that the birth parents that I worked with. So just be yourself, share the facts, how they are. And so people would put like, this is how long we've been married. Here's what our extended family looks like. I have a dog. Here's our careers. You really share information that's really as personal but non-identifying as possible, because you don't know what kind of adoption communication someone's going to want in the future.
Right.
So you add all those facts. And some birth parents, it's amazing what they would relate to. You would think it would be, okay, I'm looking for a specific career or this or that. And that's certainly true. But there was a time where I was looking through a booklet with a birth mom, and she was like, they have the same kind of dog I had growing up.
Oh.
And that was the clincher for her. Because it was a remembered, felt experience from her childhood that was happy and that was good. And she wanted the same thing for her child. She wanted those happy experiences. Right. And so, I'm not saying if you're a pre-adoptive parent listening to this, go out and get a dog. Because some people were like, ooh, I'm glad they don't have pets. I mean, you really just have to be yourself and allow the Lord, really, if you're a believer, to like hand him over to that process. Trust him with it, and just know that it'll work out. But you wait. Some adoptive parents would wait 2 months. Some would wait 2 years. It really depended on who looked at their album and who wanted to meet them.
That's a great question, because we've talked to a lot of foster parents and parents who have fostered to adopt, but we've never really talked to someone who's worked in purely the adoption space. And, there's a waiting list for infants, or there's a waiting list for a lot of domestic adoptions, but there definitely aren't waiting lists for foster parents who want. So it's a very different dynamic.
It's like the wait list is in reverse,
right?
Because our foster care system is so packed, full of kids. The ones who are waiting are the kids.
Can you tell us about your transition from that space to what you do now professionally as a children's pastor?
I know. Well, I'll tell you, I did not ever think I was going to be a children's pastor. Like, it wasn't something that I didn't go to school for it. Obviously, I went to school for social work. I love social work. I love pairing ministry with psychology and with, just that realm. The social work realm. I feel like those two partner so well together. They can't be separated. And my social work career really has informed my ministry and how I do it. But I wasn't planning on working in the church. My dad was a pastor. My mom was like the freebie, like 2 for 1, like Twinkies, like, oh, she has music ability. Like, my dad's hired, but my mom's working. And while there were a lot of strengths to being a pastor's kid, I just found my passion in doing ministry outside of the church through social work. So I had my first baby. I have 3 kids now. And I continued doing adoption casework into his first year of life. And I still loved my job. But I will tell you, when I became a mom, my heart immediately changed. My life changed. My priorities changed. My mind changed. I wasn't sure what was going on with me. I was a career woman. I was like always going to be doing social work and adoption. For me personally, I didn't realize how hard it would be to do both at the same time and figure things out. But I was doing it. The ladies I worked with were amazing. Some of them were moms, and I felt so supported. It was when I started realizing that my oldest son was different than his peers. I would have play dates on the weekends or, just with friends at the park. And I was like, oh, he's a little bit different than them. He can do the things that they can do, but he's not really thinking the way that they're thinking right now. So his motor skills were great. But I noticed just some differences in his development. And that was curious to me. And that kind of led me on a path to his diagnosis and understanding what it looks like to be a mom of a child who has special needs but doesn't look like it and doesn't always act like it. But when his neurodivergence comes to play, I suppose, I don't know how else to say it, and I want to be respectful to him because it's his story. He's 9 now. What do you do with that? And I didn't know. We've been on a 9-year journey, and so I felt like, okay, I need to devote my time to him fully because there are things that I don't understand about him, and his tantrums are not normal tantrums. They're lasting for 4 hours, and he's doing self-harm behaviors as an 18-month-old. Like, everyone's telling me this is normal for boys, but it didn't sit right, and it didn't feel normal. And so it was a hard decision, but I left my job at Family Life Services and I started becoming an advocate in a different way for my son. And it's been hard, but for the last, 6 years, I've been at home with him and having more babies. Figuring out how to give him the best quality of life and for him to not use his diagnosis. He has something called pragmatic social language disorder, which for him really mirrors high functioning autism, and is very undetectable to people who don't know him very well until he has a sensory thing or until a peer doesn't act in a way that his rigid mind expects. And so then he'll respond in a way that doesn't feel like a 9-year-old should respond. And then what do you do with that? And so we've done a lot of ABA in-home therapy with him, a lot of things. That was how I left the adoption world, really, in a sense, at least vocationally, because I needed to give my attention to him and have more kids.
As I'm sitting here listening to you, I'm a little bit farther down the motherhood journey. Women, gender, motherhood is something I have studied, and it is absolutely a passion. And as I listen to your story, I feel thankful that I'm sitting here across the room from you, and there's so much empathy. And as you started talking about what it's like to be a mom and have a career, you don't know until you know. Right. And a piece of your heart is outside of your body when you have a child. And I always try to tell people who are in helping professions, because you're a helper, social workers are helpers, you're on a place on the river. You're helping other people's children and other people's families. That's very emotionally exhausting. It's also physically exhausting. So as I was listening to you, it's, it's your story and it's unique, but you're also a part of a shared story that so many other mothers can hear. So thank you for sharing your story, but know you're a part of a great collective of women who are trying to figure out, how do you do it all? How do you do both of it? What ball do you drop? Some balls bounce and others shatter.
It's so true. And, and that's, I didn't have fear coming into this, but I'm like, oh, a podcast. I've never done anything like this. And I really, I wouldn't want anyone to hear my experiences and story and think that theirs has to be the same or that they have to feel the same way as I do. So I hope that it can bring some encouragement, but also know that if you're listening out there, like, it doesn't have to be like mine, and you don't have to feel like me in it. But that this is just how it's been for me. And that transition was really, I felt good. I felt good it was really hard. Being a mom at home doesn't mean you're not working. It just means you're not getting paid for all of the million things that you actually do. And being a mom who has a career means you still do all of that. And then you have this other thing that you
2 jobs, if
you're
not more.
doing. Yeah. And so
there's a respite somewhere. Most people wouldn't see their job as a respite, but you're at least not doing the physical part of parenting, or you're not. So in some ways, it's a very different dynamic when you leave the home versus when you you don't leave the home.
It is. You're using a different part of your brain, and you're utilizing a different part of who you are. And sometimes for me, those 6 years that I was solely at home, I did forget that I was competent in other areas. Honestly, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that I think that I know what I was talking about there. You forget how to use other parts of who you are.
Muscles that haven't been worked in a while.
Yeah. Vocabulary words other than poop and booger.
Right. Or like, oh, I can wear something other than my leggings. Although, I called it my mom uniform. Like, why would I not wear my leggings and my workout tank top? Because I exercise in it, and then I go to the park in it, and it's comfortable because now I'm on the floor playing. My job is to like build towers and make wipe noses and like all the other things too. But I was really comfortable there. I had found a rhythm, even though there were moments of hard and lonely in being at home with my kids. But one of my dear friends, she was the kids director at our church a few years ago, and she announced that she was going to go back home. And I was like, oh man, she started this kids program at our church. I was so thankful that our kids had a place to be, to belong, to learn. She did such a great job with that. And I was like, I am praying for whoever takes her job, because that's going to be big. It's going to be a big job because our church has been growing and we had a lot of new families coming. And I was like, that is a lot. Like, Godspeed to whoever that person is. I'm going to start praying for them. And so I started praying for whoever that person is.
Yeah, God has a hilarious sense of humor.
And then in my prayer time, I was like, man, if I did this, I would probably change this because of this growth here. Or, oh, that would be really great to incorporate this into that age group. Man, this age group really needs belonging here and it needs to be seen here. And my husband was like, that really sounds like a kids pastor. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to do that. I want to venture into the world of what would it look like to homeschool my kids. And I want to just be comfortable.
Yeah.
Like comfortably uncomfortable. I didn't know that, but I was very resistant. And then in my prayer time, I was like, I just felt the nudging from the Holy Spirit of, you don't have to operate out of fear. Like, I've got you in this. And I was like, oh no, you don't. Like, honestly, because I love the Lord. I want to trust him, but like, it isn't until he calls you into something uncomfortable that it gets tested. I was like, I actually don't want to do this, God. I will do anything else for you. I don't want to do this. And I knew I just had to obey because the nudging became a direction. And I will tell you what, sometimes obedience comes before passion.
That's good.
That's really good. And as I was listening to you, a lot of people are very curious about the calling or the nudge.
Yeah.
And yours happened through praying for someone else or praying about the problem. So I would encourage people who are believers but don't ever feel like they're being called. Are you listening? How does it happen? Like, for some people, they can remember the exact moment. It was almost, I was going to say biblical, like, that you could hear a voice or you could hear and you're describing through prayer, knowing that God is nudging you.
Yeah. I would say too, it's like people are like, what do I do? Like, what do you find yourself praying about? What do you find yourself thinking about? Is it masked in like an anxiety or a fear? Or is it something that you really do care about? You just don't know what to do about it. I'm not a perfect anything. I don't sometimes know the next steps that needs to happen for my life or ministry. Oftentimes. But also, like, am I surrounding myself with people who maybe have experience with that? And am I praying about it? Am I trusting the Lord to guide me and lead me in it? as well. Is it okay to not know everything
Being
before
vulnerable.
you just try?
Uh-huh.
Is it okay to publicly fail?
Mm-hmm.
That's my biggest fear is like, ooh, okay, this kid's ministry is growing. There's parents who are relying on us. Is it okay to try something and fail in front of people?
Yes.
I
fail forward.
The answer is yes. In my mind, I'm like, no, it's not. I'm scared. Really, it is like a daily, like surrendering that fear and recognizing it though, recognizing it for what it is. Like, okay, am I operating out of fear today, or am I operating out of trust and even my unknowing? What resources can I surround myself with so that in my unknowing, I can still trust? I can just go to someone who might know, you know, like having someone in the skin in the game. You said your mom was like a kid's pastor. That's why I was serious. Like, what's her number?
Hey, I can give it to you for real.
Because it is important in your calling. Like, God will never call you someplace that doesn't impact people. That might be a bold statement to say, the word never, but he tells us to go out and make disciples. Our callings are to love him and love people. And so surround yourself with the right kind of people.
And for those of you listening, you know, Lindsey brings up something that is super common, the fear of failure. And I have spent my life devoted to teens. We have to teach people that failure is a part of success.
And learning.
Yeah, when we look back as adults and we look back over our lifetimes, some of our biggest growth points or some of our biggest successes were things that we thought were failures. So I would challenge you to think, are the things that you perceive as failures in this children's ministry really failures?
Right.
They're probably not.
Probably not.
But to you, you knew what you thought perfection would be in that moment.
Right.
But if it doesn't live up to that, is it a failure? Most of the time it's not.
Yeah.
It's true. You know, we can go into something with our own perspectives and our own desires and our own wants and outcomes. But really, at the end of the day, if we're in God's word, in ministry, if we are praying, if we are inviting people along with us and it doesn't go the way that we want, who are we to say, well, this isn't what I wanted? You know, it's like, well, what if this is what God wanted?
Right.
And yeah, failure, I am learning that failure, quote unquote, for those of you who can't see me with my air quotes, is it really that? You know, I think, like you said, just flipping that on its head and understanding that we're all people and that we can lead with vulnerability and with authenticity and as a person and not as this untouchable someone who can lead the charge and we're never going to make mistakes and we're never going to mess up. It's like a good leader will own it. Like, you know what? That didn't work out the way I wanted to, or I could have done something different or better in this situation. Forgive me. Let's move forward. Does anyone else have any other great ideas? Like surrounding yourself with a team of people who can help you refine it and you not be on your own, because it really isn't about us. And
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is kind of a dissonance between expectation for something that's going to happen versus the reality of something happening in the moment, right? So it's learning to get comfortable with not being able to control the outcome of something, even though you've prepared, you've, you know, kind of forecasted, but it is what it is.
Right.
And
You
it's
said forecasted. My oldest son, he's very smart. He likes to know the facts and the details, and he's rigid in his thinking. So what we plan for must be the outcome, right? And so he gets really mad at weather forecasters.
No way. He's like, I don't trust you.
That weather guy said it was supposed to be, you know, sunny, but look outside, it's raining. You know, like they're wrong.
Yes.
So you just reminded me of that.
That's so funny.
I know. Sometimes you just don't know what the weather's going to be like.
Yeah.
But yeah, our resiliency is what keeps us going, and who we're relying on, ourselves or something else.
Right.
Totally.
And as you were talking, I was thinking about, I read a lot of books and I'm constantly thinking about things that I've read over the years. There's a really funny leadership book called Who Moved My Cheese? And it's about mice. And I will never, ever forget the question in Who Moved My Cheese? What would you do if you weren't afraid? And you overcame that question. You would be the children's pastor. You would be the children's ministry leader if you weren't afraid. Yeah. So I want people listening to understand fear is really natural. Fear, anxiety has kept us alive from things that are dangerous. It's a very natural response to be afraid. And if you are a believer and you study the word, people throughout the Bible are afraid of things. And God is oftentimes saying, like, what do the angels come and say? Do not be afraid or fear not. And you want to be like, that's easy for you to say. But fear is a very natural response. And sometimes you still do it scared.
Yeah. I tell my kids often, they're like, I'm scared. You know, my 3-year-old every day, even though when I come to pick her up from school, she says, Mommy, leave.
Right.
You know, she doesn't want me to get her. But every morning she will go in and it's the same. She will say, Mommy, I'm afraid. I don't want to go in. Like, well, remember yesterday how you had so much fun. And I was like, sometimes, girly, like, that's how, being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you do it anyway.
Yes. My dear child, there are many adults who are afraid to go into work every day.
I know.
I wish I could say it's
Girl,
going to change.
I'm scared too.
Girl, me too.
I was afraid to come and talk into a microphone.
And now look at you. You're doing great.
There you go.
Hey friends, let's talk about real impact. Imagine a single mom struggling to keep her family together or a child sleeping on the floor because they don't have a bed. Now imagine you being able to meet that need. That's exactly what happens every day through Care Portal.
Care Portal is a platform that connects real-time needs from local children and families to people like you, churches and individuals who want to make a difference. With just a few clicks, you can step in, meet a need, and build a meaningful connection that changes lives.
This isn't just charity. It's the church and the community coming together, showing up in love and action. So if you're ready to turn compassion into action, visit careportal.org and see how you can be a part of the movement, because connection changes everything.
Visit careportal.org for more information on how to sign up and start meeting the needs of children and families in your own zip code. Once again, that's careportal.org.
Thank you, Care Portal, for sponsoring the Mended Futures podcast.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to sometimes obedience comes before passion. Do you feel that the passion has come to you?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Okay. So I'm a very passionate person anyway. I'm very emotional, empathetic. I'm crying all the time. I can cry when I'm sad, when I'm happy, when I'm inspired. It's just, that's how the Lord made me. Tears just come.
Same. My eyes leak.
Yes. My daughter has come to the conclusion to ask me, are your tears happy or sad?
Oh, yes.
They're happy. And she's like, oh, good, Mommy. Because I just am a crier. I have tissues in all of the rooms at church, not for the kids, but for me. So yes, obedience comes before passion. That's not always the case, but that was the case for me in this. Yeah, at the same time, I've always been passionate about children and families, always. And I've always been asking that question, how do I integrate my social work training with my Christian faith? Because these two things are often, I think, in our culture, Christian culture, or maybe non-Christian culture, opposing one another. But they are not. There is so much beauty in understanding how psychology and faith work together. Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, body, mind. You know, he's like pointing to the whole person. Why would he exclude? He didn't. He didn't exclude your mind. He created it. Anyway, that's another thing I'm passionate about. Passionate about kids ministry. I quickly started understanding one of the reasons I wanted to do it was just for practicality. I'm kind of like a fixer. So if I see something that might be not even an issue, but I'm like, that could be more efficient. I was a volunteer in kids ministry and I'm like, this room could be more efficient. I think I could do this. or this.
Ministry needs people like you.
Yeah, just
to make
bring some of
processes
that,
more efficient.
Yeah, that efficiency, that organization. Again, not because that wasn't necessarily there before, but because of our growth, systems have to change.
I'm laughing at you because I feel that.
Yes.
That even if I try to just volunteer, I'm sitting back and thinking of solutions. Not that I could do it better, but I have an idea that might help.
Yeah, it's just like your mind.
Yes. And sometimes I wish I didn't have that or didn't do that.
You wouldn't be so innovative.
Right. Just do.
Just go in and volunteer and leave.
Just do
Clock
what
in
the
and
other
clock out.
people tell
This is
you
what
to
I
do.
did. I went and volunteered, and then I became the pastor.
Right.
You know, I'm like, what is my problem?
Yes.
But it started with that, and it started with the practicality of I want my children to have a place where they can learn about God in ways that are developmentally appropriate and relatable to them, in ways that they can really see God not just as stories of old. Like, look what God did for David and when he was facing Goliath. Look what God did for these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who were standing before a king saying, it doesn't matter if my God saves me or not. I'm still not going to bow to you. And then they go into a fire and there's a fourth man. What? These stories are amazing and they're good and they're inspiring. Also, how do our kids understand that God is working for them now?
Through those stories of old. That you're going to have
God,
that. Yeah.
Who is expressing his power and glory and greatness through ordinary people in this wonderful book we call the Bible is a God who is sitting with you now in the present. Like he is with you. There's nowhere you can go from his presence. And do you know that? Right. Like, how have you seen God working in your life? I want volunteers to share and parents to share. Well, yeah, God provided for, the woman through Elijah, and her oil never ran dry out of her oil container. What do they call it? I want to say bucket. What am I talking about? He can provide for you now because this is what he actually did for me. Like, he provided for me when we couldn't pay this bill. Like, we need to talk to our kids about what God is doing, what he did then, and that those things are applicable and happening currently in their life and in our lives as volunteers who are their mentors and as parents who are guiding them in this world. So he has given me such a huge passion for teaching kids, not just my own, because I wanted my kids to have those experiences. But I have grown to learn to love all of these kids. And it's so exciting to see them connecting the dots and loving coming to church, having a place to belong, but knowing it's because there's a God who loves them and not because people are always good, but because God loves them.
And sometimes children are a clearer reflection of God than adults. There's something beautiful, the innocence, the empathy, the childlike wonder, out of the mouths of the babes. They're ministering to us in so many ways.
So many ways. A new volunteer came in just this Sunday, and she said, I forgot how much I loved to work with children. I walked in, and within 10 minutes, I was in with them. They were I was one of their best friends.
Yes.
And she's like, I know I'm not doing it for that. I hope I don't sound weird. I'm like, no, you're just experiencing the belonging of kids. The beauty of them is that they live in the present. And when we're adults, we try to get back there. That's what anxiety and fear is. We're afraid of or anxious of the past or of the future. We're not living in the present. Kids are all about the present.
So talking about the psychology behind faith, the psychology behind why we do what we do, you'll oftentimes hear me talk about dopamine. We're always chasing dopamine, and there are very unhealthy ways to get dopamine.
Yeah.
But working with children, hanging out with puppies.
It's the purest form. Yes.
Children's laughter.
Oh, yes.
We chase dopamine, and a children's ministry is going to be full of all the worm brain chemicals.
It
They're hysterical.
They're
They
so
are
funny.
hilarious.
Like, do you have a
So
favorite
funny.
dinosaur? If you don't, what's wrong with you? What's your fourth favorite color? You know?
I know. And kids help you start thinking about that.
Man,
You know,
I lost my fourth favorite color. How do I not
Like,
have that?
how do
I've
I
lost
not
my
have
sense of
that?
whimsy.
Right.
They have it in full. We were asking, part of what we do in each of the rooms, we start curriculum-based rooms at the age of 3.
Mhm.
And that's when they're starting to memorize their little Bible verses, and they can. And so why not?
Mm.
They're doing fantastic with it. But we also emphasize prayer in all of the rooms that
Cool.
we're in. We're ages 0 to 5th grade. So with the little babies and the like 2 to 0, we always say pray for them and over them. When you're holding those babies, just pray over them, pray truths over them. When in the 3-year-old room is when we start praying with them. And so we asked, does anyone want to pray today? And one of the little girls said, please pray for my dog. Her leg is broken. And we were all the little kids were like, oh no. Like such present empathy.
Yeah.
And even the volunteers were like, wow, we will pray for your dog. What's your doggy's name? So they all gathered together, all these 3-year-olds on the carpet, and their little heads bowed like a crown. They were all like this little circle of bowed heads. And she just prayed with such passion for her dog. And so when her mom came to pick her up, the teacher was obviously like, oh my goodness, she prayed this beautiful prayer for your dog. We're praying for your dog's leg. And she said, we don't have a dog. And she's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, well, I'm like, well, so-and-so said that, your dog's leg is broken. She's like, oh, that's her stuffy. Her stuffy's leg fell off. And I was like, well, Mom.
No wonder it was serious.
We literally just prayed for the leg to heal. So if you don't know how to sew, bring the dog to me to church this week. I will sew that leg back on.
Right.
I'm not an expert.
She prayed so fervently.
I can thread needle that thing.
Yeah.
I know. I was like, she is believing that dog will be healed. Hallelujah. Amen, Jesus. She is like, yes, I see. So I'm like, you gotta sew that leg back on.
That's amazing.
The next week she came back and she said, friends, my dog's leg is better. And we all celebrated because you know what? That was actually important to a 3-year-old.
That was a real issue.
That was a real, true issue for her. And we don't want to slough that off. It's like, you know what? Like, let's pray because God cares about your feelings and he cares about what's important to you.
So you've shared your heart about children's ministry, pastoring. How do you balance that with being a mom?
I know.
How do you do it all?
I don't, honestly. Or if I do, I don't do it all the time. I was thinking about this question a lot, like I was like, can someone be sitting next to me who knows the answer to this question so that I can actually learn from them? Yeah, I would love to learn from them. But I really have thought about this seriously. And the answer is that no one is going to ever be able to do everything. And if you try, you will be tired. And you probably won't do you just can't. I think some very practical things, it does help me to be organized. I mean, I have a planner. Like if we're getting into like the actual practical things, I have to color code my life. I mean, I'm like, okay, this is what is the priority this week for my family. I do that at the beginning of the week. Or even the beginning of the month, like this is what needs to happen for my family. I need to be here for my child at this thing at his school. Like it's non-negotiable for me. But I also have these things with work. Like how do I, in ministry, how do I balance both? Because I feel like there is a bit of a difference working at the adoption agency and working at the church. I felt like there was more defined boundaries for others of what my work was. Oh, Lindsay's not in the office. I'm not going to call her on her cell phone because she's out of her office. Like she's not at work. But with ministry, I have her cell phone number. I'll just text her. She'll probably answer when she has the time. There's no one who's actually, ill will towards me in that regard. And then you have this feeling too of like, well, ministry, like their needs can't wait, right? Like they're looking to you for guidance or help. It's not just kids ministry. It's not just a ministry to kids. Something I learned really quickly. It's a ministry to parents, to caregivers, caregivers who aren't mom and dad biologically, but they're caring for children that they love that are in their family or foster children. So you have those dynamics, but then also volunteers. So many of my volunteers are young college students. And I'm like, man, if you love college ministry, volunteer with the kids ministry because you'll be double duty. Like I'm 37. I didn't think I would ever get to the point where a college student was a child in my eyes, like a kid, not a child like in a demeaning way, but a kid still.
And that's a way to go.
I'm here now.
That's a way to go upstream with college students when you think about teenagers are going to be the next parents. You know, you're almost preparing some of these folks for parenthood or mentoring young people. Yeah,
next generation are not just the kids. They're sometimes the volunteers that you're ministering to as well. And so it feels, and when you have a passion for something and it feels all like everything feels like it's important and everything feels like you need to prioritize it as number one. And so I've really had to stop and think, what is my first ministry? My first ministry is my family and my children. And then it's what God has called me to in addition to that, because he has like brought to me children that he's entrusted me with and my husband. So practically speaking, I do just have to look at week to week and month to month and be like, what are the highest priorities? But sometimes I don't know because it all feels important. And that's where it's really important, I feel like, to have one or two people in your corner that can help you. You know, that you can really, truly be vulnerable with and say, I'm struggling here and I don't know how to prioritize this. Can you help me? And that might be a friend, or it might be someone who has done this before. I have a mentor in the game. She's been a kids pastor or doing kids ministry for over 25 years. And I go to her when I'm feeling overwhelmed. I have a meeting with her after this because I'm in one of those spots, friends. I'm like, wow, today is overwhelming. I don't know how to prioritize. So I go back to my person and I say, this is what I have going on. Can you help talk me off the ledge?
I love that advice for people. I listened to something recently that says each one of us needs our own board of directors and they don't have to know each other.
Yeah,
so
it's true.
You're describing that phenomenon and call them whatever you like, but you need people that will remind you when you forget, and you need people who will keep you in check.
Yeah, and not be afraid to do that. And then you be humble enough to receive their correction or their warning of like, you know, it seems like you've been doing a lot of work. Like, how are you and your family? What attention are you giving to your family? I'm so grateful for the staff at Crosspoint because the two lead pastors, they ask me that. They don't ask me, what have you gotten done this week? How many kids have you increased by? Like, they're like, how are you taking care of your family? How are you in the word this week? Like, so that you can like actively truly rest, like have a Sabbath. What does your Sabbath rhythm look like? That's what they ask me when I meet with them. Not how many kids have you grown by and what systems have you created? And I think because they probably know I'm already doing that because I'm like a go-getter. But also because they understand, like, you know, you have people in your corner that understand what's really important. And also counseling. I am seeing a professional licensed counselor, and I'm like, I think that that's important because not that you always have to see one, but man, if you are working in ministry, make it a priority to go to counseling at some point. Even if you don't really know what it's about, just be like, hey, I need to talk about some stuff because it is so important. It's helped me understand where I operate out of when I'm overwhelmed. Do I operate?
What's your default?
Fear. And I didn't think it was even that. I thought, oh, I'm just anxious. I'm just a little bit anxious. I care a lot and I just want everything to be done well. It's my perfectionism. These socially acceptable words in conversation to non-Christians or Christians alike that almost, in my experience, were self-glorifying in a way of like, oh, I'm just a perfectionist. I didn't mean it that way. It's not just my perfectionism. What is really going on with me? I'm afraid that I won't do well.
Right.
I'm afraid that I'm not enough, not just in ministry, but in my personhood. Are those things true when I look at the Word of God? How has He created me? Who has He created me to be? Who is He? What's His character? sorting through what's underneath all of that stuff that you're feeling so that you can catch it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that when you have those people around you, you can say, I actually operate out of fear of failing and fear of not being enough when I am overwhelmed. I need you to know that so that you can call it out in me when I'm overwhelmed and I forget.
Mm-hmm.
And those two things, like those have really, really helped me in ministry and in life. It's helped me in my marriage. It's helped me in my parenthood, but it's not easy and you have to take time for it. And you feel like you don't have time for it. I don't have time to add something else to my plate.
You don't have time not to.
Right. And that's what I'm learning. Like if we really want to do things kingdom minded in ministry, if that's like what our goal is in life, like what's our mission? Like taking things off of your plate momentarily to take a deep breath and then start purposefully putting things back on. Not so that everything is about self-care or everything is about self-sabotage or self-sacrifice, that there's like a healthy balance of all of that. And I don't have it down. Like today I was joking with you all before we started this, like, yep, I told my kids to tuck and roll out of the car because mommy has a meeting. I'm like driving like a mad woman to get here on time. But not every day and maybe not every week will feel balanced or good. But taking a step back and giving yourself permission to breathe and look, okay, life has been unbalanced this week in regards to ministry. I spent a lot of time on this. I'm going to tell the people around me, hey, I'm here. I'm still going to do what I'm here to do, but I really need to take today to be with my family. So unless it's an emergency, I'm just going to let you know I'm not going to answer my phone or my emails. Understanding how to have those boundaries, but then understanding how to communicate them to other people in a way that's loving to them and not like a boundary out of my stress. Like, you can't call me today. Okay, whoa. Like, how do I communicate with the people around me that's still honoring to them, where they still feel cared for, they still feel loved, they know they're important. They also know that I am not going to be there today, but I'll be there tomorrow. And I love them and I care for them. So how do we communicating those boundaries is just as important as having them, the way you communicate them. You know, I'm learning all of this. Like it's hard. It's not easy.
I really appreciate that you shared the part, and it's vulnerable. A lot of what you have said so far today is vulnerable, but it's validating that you can be a believer and you can go to counseling. You can do this, and you can have boundaries and be ministering. So I think that's important for folks when you think of 518 moving towards the mental health, moving towards going upstream for kids and families. An overtly Christian organization is endorsing mental health.
That's providing it.
Yes, and providing it. That's really important. And so when you think about sharing your story, you've just answered our next question, but you didn't even know. Maybe you did, but you talked us through what you do when you feel out of balance or that struggle.
Yeah.
The name of this podcast is the Mended Futures podcast. Are you the product of a mended future?
I know. When I think about, am I a product of a mended future in that way? And you mentioned there's little T's and there's big T's. I think I've had a series of little T traumas in my life that have informed how I think and who I am. And I'm so grateful for counseling, and I'm so grateful for the love of the Lord through his word and prayer and his people to speak truth over my life and the lies that the enemy has caused me to believe. Something that I think is so interesting that I've been learning is that oftentimes I believe we have a real enemy, an enemy, Satan, who is like, he's not omnipresent. He can't read our thoughts. He's not God, but he wants to pretend that he is. And so he can't be with us personally all the time and then go and try to sabotage somebody else. But what he can do is he can speak lies into our own heads through our experiences and through our traumas. And then we do his work for him. And other people do his work for him, because it's like, I've had this experience. Oh, I must not be good enough. Or I've had this experience. I must not belong. And we believe these statements about ourselves and we agree with them. We agree, I'm not worthy. I'm not enough. I don't belong. I will always be ... You can fill in the blank and put in your own word. And when we believe those things about ourselves, we've already lived defeated, and we're living in a defeated mindset. And I have had some little T traumas that have informed my idea that I don't belong, that I'm not enough, that I'm not smart, I'm not capable. These are just some of the I am statements that I believe, identity statements that I've fundamentally believed about who I am. And if you believe those things, then you're not going to do the things that you're capable of, that God has called you to. Something that I think is so interesting is that all of the things that I have believed about myself are actually the things that I have a deep passion and calling to provide for other people. I have a deep calling to nurture community. I want people to feel nurtured, to feel like they belong, to feel like they have a place, to not just feel like it, but to really have it, to truly belong to a community that loves them enough to do high invitation. I invite you in, but also high challenge of, I challenge you to be different. You don't have to live in your I am statements anymore, because you have a God who is I am. And he is telling you who he has created you to be. And that is so important to me. But how ironic that the enemy has tried to wound me and like, you don't belong, you don't matter, when that's actually my calling. And so oftentimes I've found when people are in deep searching of what is my purpose and what is my calling and what does that even mean? Because these are words we toss out like candy in the Christian world. What's my calling? It's often where you've been wounded. But here's the thing. We have to be able to be open to healing in those areas before we can truly step fully, firmly, feet planted with God as our foundation into that. Will we ever be perfect? No. But we have a Jesus who is. He's not calling us to be perfect. He's calling us to trust him with those areas of wounding. Heal. Don't be afraid to go to counseling. And if you are, it's understandable and it's okay. Being vulnerable is hard. But when we have the bravery to do those things, then we really oftentimes are stepping into the calling that God has on our lives. The enemy is very strategic. He's going to try to push us down where God has created us to reflect his image the brightest. And if we're a disciple of Jesus, we're all called to make disciples. That's just a blanket general. But I really believe that Jesus has also created us all uniquely. And we're all created in the image of God. And so how are you created in the image of God? What are the things that, again, full circle in this conversation, what do you find yourself praying about? Or what do you find yourself worrying about, what you wish that it wasn't a worry, it was like an action step? Those are most likely the things that will point you to what you really love and what you really care about. It may also point you to areas where you need healing. And before you can step into that fully, to be brave and talk to somebody about it.
I feel like we learned as much from you.
Seriously. I'm like, you're literally ministering to us right now.
I'm so thankful to be in this room. And through most episodes, I always say God is in this room.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful to be sitting here listening to you, because there's so many commonalities when we are on the river somewhere trying to help children and families. So I appreciate your time and your stories and your vulnerability.
Thanks. I know I prayed. I was like, well, Lord, I don't know what to say, but I know he does. And if anyone finds encouragement from any of it, we can edit this part out. But I'm like we don't really have time to waste. Like it's important to be vulnerable to a certain degree because
yeah,
right.
Why? Like what else are we to do?
Yeah.
Why else would we not?
Right.
Yeah.
If we can be vulnerable and encourage somebody else to be that, and it's just like this ripple effect of like, okay, we can be vulnerable with trusted people. I will say that with trusted people.
Know your village.
No, yeah. And if you don't have one yet, like pray about that and seek it out. Like go to church, get involved in a small group or get involved in what we call in the Wesleyan church bands. They're basically just, they're not like rock bands.
Join a band.
Join a band, man. But they're just like a little bit deeper than even a small group. It's just 3 to 4 people that get together and ask the hard questions of like, hey, where have you fallen short of the glory of God this week? Like, where have you sinned this week? What's holding you back? How has the Lord's been speaking to you? Or if you're in that place where you're like, man, that's great that this girl keeps talking about the Holy Spirit nudging her. I wish he'd elbow me every once in a while. Like, it's okay to be in those places too. I've been through so many seasons where I have not heard from the Lord, and you have to go back to what you know. I am declaring God's character in this situation right now because I know who he is, and I'm just going to say it. And I'm going to say it until I believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for being here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks
for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Mended Futures podcast, hosted by Allison Jordan and Taylor Melvin, produced by Liam Chafin, Sue England, Allison Jordan, Robert Day, Sully Jugar, and Taylor Melvin. You can find us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to see more.